we pray that you once again bless the words of my mouth and the meditations of our collective hearts as we come together this Sunday, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Friends, let's take a breath. This past week has been heavy. Another shooting at a school has shattered a community. Time in Michigan, where a 15-year-old sophomore allegedly opened fire on Tuesday, killing 4 students and injuring 7 others. It's the latest shooting in what has been called an epidemic of violence across the United States. There have been at least 29 school shootings in 2021. In another school-related shooting Tuesday, later that day, 2 people were shot, one fatally following a pair of basketball games at a Tennessee high school. That was the 29th. According to The Hill, this new Omicron coronavirus variant has been found in at least 10 states. Guess what? We're one of them. Yeah. A little over a week after the strain was discovered in Southern Africa, the variant has been found in Maryland, Utah, Missouri, Pennsylvania, New York, Colorado, Minnesota, California, Hawaii, and my home state of Nebraska. And yet here we are attempting to prepare the way of the Lord, making space, holding vigils, doing so during a pandemic. We began our Advent journey last week with a kind of flash forward from Luke 21 on the verge of his descent to the cross. And I apologize to Hugh, he does all of his work on Tuesday and it takes me the whole week to do mine. So he's better at his job, I think. So I had to give Ginny a little bit of a switcheroo because Malachi kind of goes with, or Zechariah goes a little bit with this and Malachi does too. So we had to switch out one of the texts. And the flash forward in Luke 21, on the verge of his descent to the cross, Jesus warns of difficult days ahead, assuring his disciples that God is going to make everything right in the end. And perhaps maybe we might also be in difficult times that prophetic wisdom would have in mind. And yet everything's going to be okay. And I think it's interesting. I watched Joyce, I watched you reading the beginning of Luke. Man, that's an interesting way to start a story, isn't it? Right? The way he talks about how they're approximated in time and whose empire they're in and the geography of the place. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. This week, we rewind to the very beginnings of Jesus's ministry, to Luke's account of John the Baptizer appearing in his very own wilderness experience. And let's see what that scripture has to inform us of our own wilderness experience. I grew up with my grandfather using this phrase, the gospel truth. And while there's something to be said about that, the phrase misses a little bit of the nuance. Luke's gospel is masterful. And it's meant to be read aloud, spoken in front of audiences. It's nice, we're a little kind of full today. This is kind of nice. There's somebody kind of sitting in every section. I miss your parents though today. I miss your mom, she's animated. Your dad's great, but your mom's animated. A kind of story sermon meant to declare good news. The evangelion or gospel in ways to provoke listeners to reflect or repent or believe or to go out and do something in the wider world. And as much as I love our little historical world church here, if I only provoke you to do something in this building, I have missed the mark. And that's to sin. That's the original meaning of the Hebrew word sin, was to miss the mark. If I only impact you while you're rears are in the seats, I have missed the mark of what evangelion means, what the gospel means. The Gospel of Luke is a decidedly practical, poetic tapestry of art, layered with multiple levels of meaning, grounded in both the author's immediate situation and a future meaning. So it's supposed to stake claim on the then and the now. So when others might be silent about injustices, Jesus, John the Baptizer, later disciples of Jesus, apostles, and then later disciples like us, right? And then maybe, hopefully, which I've had a whole lot of conversations this week. It was really interesting. And we can maybe have a conversation about this, but I had a conversation with one of my tables this week at Founding Farmers about whether they're going to be later disciples. So that's interesting. And what the church is going to look like in 20, 30, 50 years. But what it means for them to make, prepare, and create the way for God's arrival, making the road, quote unquote, smooth and straight. And eventually, as Luke says, everyone will be there to see the parade of God's salvation. I was listening to, I printed out the lyrics. I was listening to a Ben Harper song with my own two hands. And this is kind of what Luke is talking about here. This is just the chorus here. I can change the world with my own two hands, make a better place with my own two hands, make a kinder place with my own two hands, with my own two hands, with my own two hands. This is what Luke is talking about. It's not saying that we're God, but it's saying that we have the option of co-creating a better place, a kingdom building, co-creating a place here on earth. And Tracy Chapman says kind of the same thing. She says heaven's here on earth. That if we don't do something about this place, it doesn't really matter what's up there, out there, over there. And it's so appropriate that we light this peace candle and that you say what you say about peace not being quite here yet, right? Amidst war, mass shootings in our schools, nonetheless. And it was interesting listening to this news coming out this week, because I watched the arraignment, it was so awful. But I also watched something from inside one of the rooms where one of the officers, and I don't know about script very often, said, you know, it's all right, bro, you guys can come out. And he's like, yeah, we're gonna wait a minute. These kids were like, we're just gonna wait in here a minute. But if they had not been prepared for this trauma, they wouldn't have made it through this trauma, right? So they were prepared for what was going to come. They were preparing the way for the trauma and yet also preparing the way for their safety, right? And these kids probably learned how to do this in kindergarten and first grade, because how long have, you know, whatever your Columbine was, you know, this is decades in coming, right? We light this candle knowing that peace is not fulfilled as we light the candle, but we do it anyway, right? We do it anyway. And in the same way, this week's reading from Malachi, the Ginny read, the prophet speaks of the messenger. And so I started writing this on Monday, and I give Hugh on Tuesday, he sent me, which I think I've already sent him an email, which I hadn't, thinking that God is interrupting our silence, right? And then I go back and I read Malachi, and we're the ones that have to speak out. We're the ones that have to say, oh, I saw that car over there. I saw this injustice, right? The prophet speaks of the messenger who will prepare the way for God's arrival. Christian interpreters have often identified the messenger as John the Baptizer, right? But everywhere, every century, every decade, every moment, there is a new messenger, right? This morning, Jenny brought us the word, right? So Luke is using literary convention to make a profound point. The last figure he names in the list is John the Baptizer. John the Baptizer is a relative nobody, right? We all know John the Baptizer is John the Baptist, right? We all know him. He's beheaded. We don't want that fate. I don't want to be beheaded. That sounds awful, right? And he's given divine authority. The phrase Luke uses here is a word of God came to John. It's identical to the phrase used in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of Hebrew scripture, right? Luke's point is clear. Despite appearances, the real power and authority resides neither in the imperial palace nor the sacred temple, but rather in this, relatively, as he just was described, a scraggly figure. He's alone in the wilderness, preaching repentance beyond the coordinates or control of the empire. God's doing something great here through just this guy, this person. In the same way, we could say something similar. We could say in the time of Biden, or last year we would say in the time of President Trump, when Beth, the financial secretary, gave the message, or Hugh or Joyce gave the message, all of us are relevant in God's movement to the gospel, the good news of the word in our world. So that's what Luke's doing here. Joyce, it's horrible when you're reading it, right? You're like, what? Tiberius, who, where, what? But that's what Luke is doing. He's giving us who, what, when, where, under what empire, in what geography. And that's what they're doing, right? So it's like President Biden or President Trump or President Hoover or what, that's all they're doing in that text, right? And likewise, Malachi's vision of the final redemption is animated by this profoundly inclusive dynamic. God's messenger doesn't separate these righteous priests, right, from Levitical priests, from unrighteous ones, or cast the latter into outer darkness. So you could be the messenger, or Andy could be the messenger, or Matt, any of us, right? It tells us that we are all called to be messengers and interrupt the silence of injustice in the world. When we see something, we need to say something. We need to go from this place, our temple experience, where we hear the gospel. And the temple experience can happen anywhere, right? It can be in this space. It can be at your hair salon. I know you have temple experiences at your hair salon. It can be sitting at the dinner table. It can be in the theater where you have a temple experience. It can be any temple experiences don't have to happen in what we traditionally think of as sacred spaces. Now I sure hope they do, right? Because otherwise I gotta figure something else out. I hope that we have a temple experience here, right? But there are so many places where God has called us in a sacred conversation, and they stop me short sometimes, right? Like, again, I had a sacred conversation waiting tables the other day, and I was like, what is happening? And I had to go run some food, and then I came back to that conversation because it's so rare that somebody says, oh, But God has called us to be voices in the wilderness, voices for those who have no voice, voices for us to say, wait a minute, and hopefully now that we've had enough of those conversations and it's taken us 3 days to be aware that we've had that conversation, now we can be more attuned to having them in the moment, right? But again, preparing the way for the Lord means co-creating with God sacred communion. Friends, God doesn't promise us peace all the time. God doesn't promise us peace in the world. But we do get to have peaceful moments. We do get to have those moments where we can bring a breath of fresh air to someone. We do get to say, oh, I see you, right? And to say that I see that injustice happening to you. And that doesn't promise us that peace comes without cost, right? It's a risk. It's a huge risk to say, I see that injustice. And there's a cost to our vote. There's a cost to preparing the way. And we're here because we feel called. And who knows what that risk is? We don't always know what that risk is, right? Sometimes there's a risk to our pocketbook. Sometimes there's a risk to our reputation. You know, hanging out with people that are on the margins doesn't always make us look shiny and new, right? But we're here because we feel called. And it's funny that we start off reading something thinking one thing and we end up somewhere else. You know, again, when I started this and I came up with this title, I thought that God was the silent interrupter. But it's us, and we've got to go out there and start making some more noise. That folks, people aren't going to come here if we don't start making some more noise. There are 3 churches on the strip, and people don't know we're here and out there and won't see us and won't hear the gospel until they hear and see us sharing it. Amen.